I've come from very humble beginnings where I thought I was really good. And when I started to enter the wards, I realised that I wasn't. And it was a massive learning curve as far as, wanting to self-improve and more importantly, listen to what I was being told to how to get those marks and get up what I wanted to get to.
Yeah, we're going to talk about your journey as an award-winning photographer in a minute. And of course, one of the reasons why I love coming out and talk to photographers in their sort of natural habitat, as it were, is because we can get a really good impression of how your studio works, what the kind of things are that you do on a day-to-day basis, which ultimately leads you to being so successful in your area of photography. And if you cast your mind back a little while ago, I did a similar in-studio podcast episode at Ivan Wies's studio in London. So this will be a similar thing. So we'll have a look around the studio. We'll see how this works and why this is so special. And also, again, it'll give us a really good impression of what Scott does. Scott? I don't know. My accent has changed since we've been in Dallas, I think.
You went back to Germany as well,
yes,
so you
exactly,
picked up extra bit of accent whilst you're over there.
Yeah, so we can do this like this, We can speak like this. This could be for our German audience. They go, I should maybe do an episode in German. Yeah, that'd be a thing. Apparently now you can use AI to auto-translate these things.
You can. I did a seminar in Zurich before Christmas, and my German, very basic German. I can order, go to a post office and ask where the bank is and stuff like that. But I had to do an image critique, and I don't speak very good German at all. And they had to, they used Google Translate. So when I was talking, there was a little window on a pop-up box, and it was translating into Swiss German. It was very, very cool. Yeah, it's very cool.
I'm looking forward to the time when all of that auto translation will become literally automatic and simultaneous. There's a thing on ChatGPT where you can use ChatGPT. You can talk to it on your phone, and so you can give it a character, and it becomes, all intents and purposes, another being that you just converse with. But I started learning Swedish about a year and a half ago, right?
Wow!
And so what I did was I instructed ChatGPT to basically have a conversation with me in easy Swedish, right?
So you can talk back to it.
Yeah, and basically what it would do is I would tell it, like, I've been learning Swedish for about a year and a half. I've been mainly using Duolingo, and that's just to give an idea as to where my level was.
Yeah.
And it completely adjusted to that in terms of vocabulary and speed.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and so I could literally have a conversation with ChatGPT
in Swedish,
in easy Swedish and beginner Swedish, basically. Whilst I was driving the car, and it was literally like talking to somebody in the passenger seat.
So cool.
And it was weird, and I have to say, it sounded really natural. It was really interesting. Yeah. So very cool thing. So in terms of language learning.
Wow, the robot overlords.
Well, yeah, exactly. That's where we are. Anyway, Scott, so we're in your studio.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about your studio and what you do in here.
Yeah, so this was initially, so I worked from home up until COVID, where I had a viewing studio in Chelmsford, not too far from here, 10 years ago, and it was really expensive because it was the centre of the city, a space a bit similar to this, but it's up for like 8 flights of stairs. And then we found out we were expecting Emily, my daughter, so I moved everything home. At the time we had an old cottage with a third floor, and I ran everything from there, so people would come into the house, through the front room, up the stairs, and into my office, and basically this. COVID happened, and that had to stop. And then when we were allowed to see people again, I realised how much I hated it. Not hated seeing people. No, I love seeing people, but coming to the house, it's very disruptive. And then so I started to look for a space that I could call my own, and it was a neutral ground, so they weren't coming to my house, I weren't going to their house, which is how I started back in the day, like a travelling salesman. I had a suitcase full of wedding albums, and I would go to their houses and present. Then this came up, and it was just perfect. So I was driving my daughter to gymnastics, and I saw the to let sign, and I had a look at it, and I thought, this is perfect. So for 2 years, it was solely as you see it now, as a wedding showroom. You used the screen up there, which so I'd show wedding albums and pictures. But in the last 12 months, we've also turned it into a portrait studio, which I don't know if you can see behind, there's backdrops up there. So now it's a multi-purpose space, so I'm getting everything out I can.
That really makes perfect sense, because in a sense, you want to use your space in as many ways as possible, to create your work.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it just becomes
Well, and there were times, especially now, because we're recording this, end of February. This is typically from weddings a downtime. So yeah, I might be seeing some clients, maybe 1 or 2 a week. But for the large part, this is empty because I actually work from home. My computers are at home, my screens are at home, so that's where I do the bulk of my work. And I come here in the evenings. But I had 10 sessions in here at the weekend. So I'm the busiest I've ever been because I'm using the space, properly, and I spin it from. I did an Instagram reel, 20 seconds to turn it from a studio to what it is now. So it takes about half an hour to turn it into a studio, and then half an hour to put it back. But it works.
But this is very similar to MySpace. MySpace, that was a thing one day.
I remember MySpace. We should go back to MySpace.
Exactly. We should set up a Camera Shake MySpace channel. That'd be good.
That'd be good.
So my space at home is exactly the same thing. It's multi-purpose because it's, where I normally am when I record the podcast, I'm sort of in my living room, right? I'm sort of in a space between my living room and my shooting space, right? And everything transforms when I'm working, and then it transforms again when I have clients because, when clients come in, the extension, which has a table in it, sometimes occasionally we use it as almost like a dining area, but all that gets flipped around, the backdrop comes down, the lights go up, and it becomes a mini studio. And then when the clients are gone, all of that reverts back to more of a living space because it is effectively a living space.
Yeah, I think it's also really important that photographers, and certainly now, are multi-genre. I think, I had a conversation with someone in America when we were out there. I don't think I've been a full-time wedding photographer for 2 years. I think because there's been fewer weddings around and I've had more time to do stuff, and the portraits was a natural kind of transition or progression or evolution, whichever you want to call it. And it's been really good fun.
Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed that clip, then press here for the full episode in glorious Technicolor. Hey, and don't forget to subscribe.